Hi guys! Today I am going to be talking to you about American artist, author, and illustrator Faith Ringgold and show you some of her story quilts, and we'll use her artwork as inspiration for this week's project. So for this week we are going to be collaging, and collage means to cut and paste art together. So you're going to need to find a variety of different kinds of paper. So perhaps newspaper, paper that you've colored on, construction paper, notebook paper, magazine paper. So any of those kind of materials. You'll also need glue and scissors, and maybe a pencil in case you want to draw out some shapes first. So go gather a whole set of different kinds of paper, a different variety, some glue, some scissors, a pencil, and come on back. I'll show you some artwork by Faith Ringgold, and then we'll get started. Faith Ringgold was born in 1930 in Harlem, New York. Much of her artwork is inspired by life in the city, and she's famous for creating these story quilts. She's also a famous author and illustrator. One of her most popular books is Tar Beach, in which the main character, Cassie, uses her imagination to fly around the city and see things that are important to her. All right, guys, I have gathered my supplies. We have looked at a few pieces by Faith Ringgold. We've seen her illustrations for her book Tar Beach. And so a lot of her inspiration comes from the city and sort of her life growing up there. And so we're going to use our papers that we have collected to create something called a cityscape. And a cityscape is like a landscape, except that it's a picture of a city skyline. So the first thing you'll need to do is decide what you'd like to build your collage on. So pick a piece of paper to be your base. And remember, if you don't have a lot of varieties of paper, again, you can grab newspaper, you can grab magazines, you can color different pieces of notebook paper or white paper to create a variety of colors. So I hope that you will gather a few different kinds of paper to add some variety to your project. So we'll need to start with a base. I think I'm going to use this piece of painted paper left over in the art room from an old project. So I'm going to use that as my base, since a lot of Faith Ringgold's illustrations took place at night. So this is a nice dark nighttime sky, and I think it'll make the other colors that I put on here pop. I've got my newspaper, and so what we'll need to start by doing, guys, is cutting out all the different pieces for our cityscape. And so we'll need a bunch of different buildings. We might even want some sky details. You could also use markers or crayons or whatever coloring tools you have to add extra details once we've glued. So I'm going to start, I think I'm going to cut out a moon shape just to add a little detail to the sky. And so you could always draw out a shape like this first and then cut it, but I think I'm just going to go ahead and make it up as I go. All right, there's my moon. Okay, and I'm not going to glue yet because I want to make sure all the pieces that I cut out lay out nicely on the paper. So I'm going to lay them out first before gluing and then add glue last. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to speed up the video a little bit. I'm going to start cutting out all of my pieces. I'm going to glue them down, and then I'll show you what mine looks like when it's all done. All right, so I think I've cut out all of the pieces that I want to cut and paste. And so I've laid them out. You might have noticed me moving things around a little bit and adjusting the size and shape of some of the buildings to fit. You can also add different variety to the tops of your buildings or the styles of the buildings. Typically in a city, you have skyscrapers, so very tall buildings. And that's why I've used tall rectangles for most of my building shapes and then kind of adjusted the tops of them to make them a little bit different. I've also tried to use a variety of different paper. So I didn't make the whole thing in newspaper. I did some construction paper, some painted paper, and some newspaper. And now I'm going to go ahead and glue because I like the way that this looks. All right, guys, so I've glued all of my buildings. I glued my moon in the sky. The last thing I want to do is add some details to my buildings. Skyscrapers have a lot of windows typically. We might want to add some doors. There might be other decorative details that you could add to each of your buildings. Maybe one of the buildings has a spire or an antenna on top. Maybe there's a roof detail that you want to add. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do that. I'm gonna speed this part up too so that you can see the final product, and then I hope that you get started on yours. Alright guys, I'm so excited to see your Faith Ringgold inspired cityscape collages. Please make sure to submit a photo on Canvas. Have a great week, guys.